Alright, let's create some 3D logos in Cinema 4D. If you ever wanted to learn how to create 3D logos like this one right here, this is like this is before the textures and lighting. This is some textures and lighting. Or maybe this one right here. This one was done for music, so you might have seen this one on Urban TV in Uganda, and also this one right here. If you stick around, you might see, you might learn how to create some camera animations like this one. This one I created while I was still learning how to animate camera. And also, what I'm not going to show you in this video is this advanced stuff of creating 3D characters. For example, creating ears, creating eyes, maybe a nose. For example, this one is the eye. I was trying to model my face. And by the way, you can leave some comments to let me know how I did. Rate me out of 10. How did I do on this model? So there's some things you need to know when you're beginning 3D. And one of them is polygon. You need to know that a polygon is made up of three things. There's what we call edge, face, and point. And something else you should know is low res and high res. Those are probably also advanced. So right here, as you can see, this is the difference between low res and high res. So if you can see, low res means low resolution, and then high res means high resolution. So as you can see, there's those smooth edges, and then there's more boxes, which are the polygons, more polygons, and smooth edges. And then the next one is less polygons and hard faces, as you can see, very sharp edges. Okay, so that's the difference. But we're not going to look at how to model this face. I'm going to simply show you how to create 3D logos and maybe animate them. So right here I was trying to learn how to create textures and lighting. Okay, it's a very basic stuff, very basic lighting. I'm horrible in lighting, I must say. And when it comes to lighting, I might have to call in one of my very good friends called Selite. This guy was born knowing how to light. You can tell by his name. Oh, and by the way, before you get started, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure to do that and hit the bell notification button. That way when I release the next video, you'll be notified. Alright, so let's begin. This is Cinema 4D right here. And by the way, if you want to create 3D logos, you can even use another software called Maya. There's one called 3ds Max. There's one called Blender, which is free, completely free. And it also does video editing and all that stuff. So this is Cinema 4D. Let's get started. So to get started, let's look at the interface. Let's begin with the Cinema 4D interface. So the Cinema 4D interface is made up of multiple sections, which if you understand will help you a lot in navigation and the workflow for all your projects. So to begin with, there's a menu. Up here, the menu includes a lot of stuff like the file menu, where you can open up a new file, you can create a new file. Edit menu with usual stuff like do, undo, redo, select. There's also the create, which is very big, very important and very huge. So you can create objects, splines, generators. You can create all these ones, also generators, and then deformers, and then we have these ones, they are effectors. They affect the objects that are in this space right here in your workspace. And then we have environment, mostly for lighting. As you can see, we have things like foreground and background. We have the sky and the floor. Then we have camera. If you want to set up the whole scene, if you want to set up your scene and probably animate something like this one, that like this video we have seen right here, that is camera animation. And then I had to rotate this. I think I had to rotate the clock somehow, but mostly it was camera animation. Anyways, so where are we? Right here on create, and then you can create materials, tags, and even sound. You can create animations that are moving to your sound, your specific sound. You can upload it right here in Cinema 4D. I think I'm not going to look at all these things here up in the menu, but as we go on, we might have to go to the menu and look at some of these things. And what you should know is most of these things in the menu you can also find right here in the tools bar. It's the tools bar and also the actions bar. You can also call this the tools bar if you want. So to begin with the tools bar, there is something like the selection tools right here. All the selection tools like the live selection, rectangle selection, lasso selection. If you watched our last video on Photoshop, how to remove the background from any photo, you might know a bit about the lasso tool, the lasso selection, and maybe the polygon selection. Next, we have these tools right here. One of them is the scale, another one is rotate, and also the scale. Sorry, not the scale. The move tool. One of them is the move tool, the next is the scale, and another one is the rotate tool. You can access them right here. Next, we have the axis, x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis. Since we are talking about 3D, we have the z-axis. If you are looking at 2D, we'll have only x and y. Okay, next is the render tools. These ones, they help you render out your finished product. If you want to preview or to render out the final output, add your project to the render queue. This is where you go. And also render settings. Next is the objects. This is how you create objects. If you go to this button right here, you will notice we have multiple objects, shapes. For example, a tube, the sphere, the cylinder. You just click on one of those and you create your object. Also the plane. Next is splines. So you can create splines using the pen tool. Can you imagine the pen tool in 3D? This is good stuff. And we have circle, we have the text spline, all the spline text. We have the star, we have the flower, very nice stuff. So extrude this one, this flower, and make it look like this one by using what you call generators. So if you click right here, you can see we have extrude, we have a lathe, which can create things like bowls, things like bottles, wine glasses, and then we have things like sweep, which can help you create like cables, electric cables, and all that good stuff. Next, we have deformers. So deformers, we have bend deformers, which can help you bend an object. We have things like the bulge, we have things like the mesh deformer, we have things like the warp, the bevel deformer, which can help you create bevels on objects without having to edit them. Next, we have looked at these ones, the floor, the sky, the foreground and background. They mostly help you with your lighting, and then cameras for setting up your scene, and the lighting for giving your scene a little bit of life. So these are mostly the most common tools that you'll be using. Next, on the left hand side, we have these ones. These ones you can call actions, probably the actions bar. So if you want to go to different modes, this is like the model mode, and then the object mode. If you want to edit on a object level basis, this is where you go, object level mode or object mode, and then animation mode if you are animating the object. Next is working with textures. For example, in the example I showed you earlier, right here, I was trying to learn how to apply textures to different objects, and this is what we call like UV mapping or UV unwrapping, to make sure that the texture applies to the specific object as it should. So this button right here, if you use it, you can be able to move the texture around and make sure the texture fits on that specific object. So there's also the points that I was talking about, and then the edges and the polygons, as I'm going to show you all the faces. Alright, another one is the axis. If you enable this, you can be able to move the center or this axis. So for example, let me show you a quick example. Let me first delete these ones. And by the way, this part right here is like the panel. So this one is the objects panel where the objects are. And if you notice on the right hand side, you'll have the content browser, which helps you look for basic objects that have been created and also presets. And even the plugins that you install in your cinema 4D, some of them will be found under the content browser. For example, if you have the GSG Light Kit, the Grayscale Gorilla Light Kit Pro, you'll be able to access it via presets. You might be able to access it via plugins or even via lighting. So anyways, let me show you very quick how this one works, the axis. So if I go to the objects panel right here and I click and I delete by simply selecting and using backspace. Actually, I didn't want to delete the cylinder, so I'll use Ctrl Z to undo that, and then I'll select the plane, use backspace to delete, and select the flower, use backspace to delete. So if you wanted to rotate this this cylinder right here, you can simply use letter R for rotate, or you can go to this tool right here, up here, click on rotate, and then you can click anywhere in this circle or these controls. You can be able to rotate this. But if you want to rotate this on a specific axis, for example X, Y, or Z, let me first use Ctrl Z to undo that, and then you see I can click on this. If you notice, the blue one down here is the Z axis, and the green in this corner, left bottom corner, this is the Y axis, the green, and then the red as the X axis. So if you want to rotate only on the Z axis, you simply go to the blue, and then you can rotate on the X axis. Now the thing is, it's rotating from the center. If you have noticed, it's rotating from the center. But what we want, if you wanted this to rotate from the bottom, you will have to move the axis. So this is where this button comes in, the enable axis button. So if I select this button and click on this one, enable axis button, I go to the move tool, you can be able to move this axis. It won't work. You know why? Because we are in object mode. So if you want this to work, because we are in the model mode, if you want this to work, you will have to go to edit mode, or you'll have to go to the object and use letter C to make this object editable. So once you are in edit mode, you can be able to move this axis. So if you have enabled the axis, you just go to the move tool, you can move this axis. As you can see, the object is not moving, the axis is moving. So you can hold down shift and take this to the bottom, or you can just use the middle mouse button to get to this full view or the quad view. Okay, so the quad view includes the top, the right, and the front. And if you want to go back to any of these views, you still use the middle mouse button in any of the views, or you can even use these buttons in the top right corner. One of these helps you to move or navigate around the scene, which is very important. The next one is for zooming in or out. Another one is for rotation, rotating around the object. And then the last one is for going to another view. Either you want to switch to a top view, front view, or the right view, or this one, the perspective view. So I think I'm going to go to the right view, and then I'm going to click on this button right here to expand the right view, and then I'm going to zoom in using this button. Then I'm going to place or move around to pan, make sure I'm looking at the bottom. So I want to make sure this axis is at the bottom. So I hold down shift and then I snap that. And by the way, you can turn the snap on or off from right here. And then if I go back using the middle mouse button, click right there and also click in the perspective view. Now first of all, you need to turn on or disable the axis, and then go back to rotation by using letter R. And then now if you rotate, you will notice that now the object is rotating from the bottom, not from the center. Very interesting stuff right there, and very important stuff, especially if you're getting started with modeling and animation. Alright, lastly, in the interface, before we jump into the actual 3D logo. So right here is the timeline. If you have any animation, this is the timeline. You can select this and go to coordination, click and hold. So you click and hold and drag to create animations on all the positions. Let's try the animation and rotation. So I'm going to click again to remove those keyframes, and then I'm going to click and drag on rotation. If you notice right here in the timeline, we have created this keyframe. It's what we call a keyframe. So if we move this up to like 60 frames, these are frames right here, and you can also change the amount of frames in your scene from here by simply typing in the amount of frames. For example, if your project is 30 frames per second, which means 120 frames will be 4 seconds, right? So if you go to settings right here, this is where I change things like how many frames per second, also the width, what is the resolution of your render, all that good stuff. You can change it from here, and then you can go to save and change and choose the destination of your render, where you want your render to go. So this is the timeline, and then I can create another keyframe at 60 frames. So now if we scrub through right now, there is nothing like an animation. That's because we have not created any animation. We have simply created keyframes. So if you want to create an animation, you can maybe go to this keyframe right here, and then you can rotate this. Now you can't see any rotation because of the axis, but if we go to another axis, for example this one, you'll notice we have the animation. So you can create animation like that. Now remember to replace the keyframe. If you create another keyframe right here, you have to make sure you lock into that animation, you lock into that keyframe. Let's try this. If you go back to the first step, notice that is the small animation that we have right now. So you already know how to animate in Cinema 4D. Even if we end the video here, let's look at the 3D logo that has brought us here. So to create your 3D logo, you might already have one that you want to extrude or that you want to convert into 3D. But if you don't, you can start by creating a spline text or the MoGraph text by going to the MoGraph menu right here. There's a cloner. These are MoGraph effectors or MoGraph objects, whatever you can call them. For example, the cloner, this one can clone multiple objects. Let me give you an example before we go on. If I click on this cloner, and then if I make this cylinder the child by dragging it under, if you notice you have that arrow pointing down, it means that I'm going to make the cylinder the child of the cloner. So the cloner is the parent of the cylinder. This is simple stuff, it should not confuse you. So right now it means that if I move the parent, the cloner, even the cylinder is going to move along with it. So to move, I just go to the move tool right here using letter E for the shortcut, and if I move this cloner, I'm moving the cylinder. Now let me show you what the cloner does. If you select the cloner, click on the cloner to select it and go to object, and then if you notice right here we have count, we also have offset, and then down here we have position, scale and rotation. So what the cloner does is it creates multiple copies of this object that you have made the child of the cloner. So right now we have 3 cylinders because of the cloner. So it's cloning up to 3 of them, but it's cloning to this axis, the y-axis at the top. As you can see, we have 50 in the y-axis. So it's supposed to be 0 in the x. So what we want is to clone on the z-axis. So we can put 0 on the y-axis and use tab button to go to the z and make this on 10. So let's make it 100. So you notice these are the copies that have been created by the cloner. And if you turn off the cloner by clicking on this right here, you notice we still have our cylinder, so it's not affected by the parent because we have turned off the parent. Okay, simple as that. So if you turn back the cloner and then you select the cloner, we can go to the rotation and maybe try to rotate on another axis. Try to rotate on this axis. You notice you can do some weird stuff or some cool stuff if you know what you are really doing. Okay, it will take a lot of time, probably a lot of testing to get what you are looking for. A lot of playing around with these coordinates, position, rotation and scale, and also these ones, the offset. And if you go to effectors, you can even add some other animations. You can come to more graph and go to effectors and then choose various effectors like delay, time effector, sound, random effector. All these ones will help you create some complex animations and complex 3D models. Again, let's go back to our 3D logo. So I'm going to select the cloner and use backspace to delete. So if you want, you can create a more graph text. Go to more graph and click on more text. Right there, we already have our 3D text. Okay, so now that you have the basics of the 3D software, Cinema 4D, and how to create objects in Cinema 4D, move around the object, move around the scene, navigation, selection, creating your models, effectors. Now we can jump into creating our 3D logo. So beginning with the text, you can simply go to text right here in the properties, panel or the attributes panel, and then you can simply type in the text that you want. For example, 3D logo. Just click right here or right here, and then you can even choose the font of this text. Go to font right here and choose the specific font that you want to apply to this text. For example, this one, Roboto Slab Black. Alright, next is you can increase, I've already showed you these buttons right here, so if I don't mention what I'm doing, you might already have an idea, but I'll try to make sure that I mention everything step by step. So this is the 3D logo, and then you can increase what we call the extrude. Okay, so in this case, if you want to edit that, you'll go to depth. So it's called the depth. So you can increase the depth of this extrude. You can also edit the space between the text. For example, if I rotate, I'm using the rotation button, and if you want to use shortcuts, you can use number 2 for zooming in or out, number 1 for moving around or navigating around the scene, number 3 for rotating around the object in the scene, especially in the perspective view, because when you are in these other orthographic views, they are called orthographic views. So if you are in one of these orthographic views, make sure you avoid using number 3. Okay, number 3 is only used in the perspective view, rotate around the object. Okay, one trick right here, if you wanted to animate each of these letters separately, you simply go to this text and use letter C to make this text editable. So when I click on letter C, you notice that it created, or it broke down all these letters into one by one, as you can see. So the L is alone, and you can tell it is alone because of this the axis or the control. Is this the control? Anyways, so you can tell it is separate because if I zoom in, you can even zoom in using the scroll button. So I scroll in to zoom in, and then I can use this move tool to move letter L away. As you can see, it's moving alone, no other letter is moving, so they are separated. Each of these ones is alone, letter O is alone. So this is how you can do some cool animations by animating each letter separate, and this is what I did in this logo animation. I think I don't have the animation right here, but this is how I did to make sure that I rotated each of these logos, each of these letters separately. And you can also use the cloner and also another effector to achieve a similar effect. Alright, so now since I already have a 3D logo or a logo designed, we can simply use that as an example, and I will show you how to convert it to 3D. So let's do that right away. Let's go back to the internet and look at one of these logos. So this is my Behance. If you want to look at these logos, you can check out behance.net/Mugabe Imran. And if you want to look at the showreel where I put together all the 3D work that I did, you can check out mugabeimran.com. Okay, so we have something like this. Now, and before we get here, we have something like this. You have to sketch down the logo and then go to software like Adobe InDesign or Illustrator. Mostly I use Illustrator or even Photoshop and convert this to vector. And then once you have your vector, you can convert this into a 3D logo. And sometimes you can simply copy this from you can simply copy the vectors from Illustrator and then paste them in Cinema 4D. Depends on the software that you are using. Since we are in Cinema 4D, let's get one of these ones and go do some stuff on this. Alright, so now we are going to open up Adobe Illustrator, and I'm going to show you how to convert something like this into vectors that you can convert into 3D. Okay, and as I mentioned, you don't need Illustrator for this. You can do everything from Cinema 4D and create your 3D logo from scratch using Cinema 4D, using all those plain tools that we talked about, using this text, and also using all these tools like this, the pen tool, the circle, the star. I mean, you can use all these shapes to come up with your own logo using Cinema 4D without going to Adobe Illustrator. But as you might already know, Adobe Illustrator is made for this, so it should be faster for us to draw out this vector logo in Illustrator than in Cinema 4D. So what I will do is open up this 3D logo, just drag it into Adobe Illustrator, and then select the image. Now it has come in as an image, so select the image, go to object and go to trace, look for image trace and click on make and expand. So wait and see what happens. Now if your object is very huge, very big size and very high quality vector, it might take a few seconds to convert this. But what it does is, if you go to the layers, and you can find the layers panel from and by the way, all these things are pretty much similar to what I've just showed you. The menu bar, the tools bar right here, and the actions bar, or the panels. For example, the layers panel, which we are looking for, you can access it from the window. Go to window and then scroll down and look for layers. Where's the layers panel? Alright, right here, layers panel. So you can access layers panel by using F7 on your keyboard. So just use F7 on the keyboard and you notice we are already there, the layers panel. All these panels can be moved around. You can move this panel around and maybe put it below this one. You can move this panel and maybe close it. You don't want it, and then layers panel right here. That's what we are dealing with. So from the layers panel, you can arrange this logo and maybe put this text alone, put the R alone, and the letter O alone. There's a lot of work to do, especially if we have just converted this logo using the image trace. But if you created this logo from scratch, you might already have each of these ones on their separate layers. So what I'm going to do at this step is fast forward to the part where I already have each of these ones broken down to their separate layers. Right, but basically what you want to do is go to this icon right here which says create new layer, and create multiple layers, and then go to this right here. If you select a layer, just click on this whatever color it is, because depending on the color of the layer, you can tell the color of the layer by looking at these ones. All these ones are lighter blue, since their mother is lighter blue. So all these new layers, you notice they have come with different colors. You can just click on this one and then move it to this layer. Simple as that. So right now this one is on its own layer. If you click on this eye, it toggles the visibility of this layer on and off. Now in this video we might have to delete or do away with some of these ones here, and then I'll just show you the main thing here, like the text and maybe the borders. So to make things easier for us, we might even decide to create a whole new logo beginning from the text. You just go to text tools, take text tool right here, and then just click anywhere and type the text that you want. Okay, next is scale this by using these controls, or look for the text panel or the character panel. So you go to window and look for character. Now you can find the character panel under type and then go to character. So click on this, and then we have this character panel, which can basically move to any of these. If you see that big blue line, you know you're moving this character panel along or into this group of these other panels. If we move this panel maybe like around here, you notice we have this long line which shows we are going to put this panel in this space right here. Okay, and then you can even put this panel below these other panels. I guess let's just take it back to this group of panels. So we can choose the font from here. Choose the font that you want for your text. You can go with a simple font, fairly simple font, maybe this one, and then increase the size of the font from here. So you can click, or you can use the drop down, then you can select any of these. So I'm going to increase the size by clicking right here and holding down. Then I'm going to decrease the size between these letters. So what you do is go to this one right here, which is called kerning, and then there's also something called tracking. So this one help you reduce the space between all the characters at once, and then this one, the kerning, is the space between us. We also have this one which is called the leading, which is the space between the lines if you have multiple lines of text. So you select all this text and use this one right here. Tracking can reduce the space between these letters, each of these characters. Okay, I think that will be enough. So what you can do is go back to this tool right here, which is the selection tool, and then you can use these controls to reduce the size of this text. Make sure you hold down the shift key. If you don't hold down the shift key, this is what happens. You can do very weird stuff and even distort your text. If you hold down the shift key, Illustrator will make sure that your text is not skewed or is not stretched. So that is one text box down. So let's go back to the layers panel. Look for the layers panel right here, and then try to move this text right here where it's supposed to be, and then duplicate this text by using Ctrl C and Ctrl V. Place it right here and double click to change the text to trouble. Next is if you want, you can create this kind of curve into the text. Now to do that, you need the path. Now in this case, the path can be a spline, or just create a new layer and then look for pen tool. You can use the pen tool. You can also use one of these shapes, for example the ellipse tool. It's like almost like a circle. So if we use the ellipse tool, we can draw this, something like this. Just click and draw, and then use the space bar. If you use the space bar, you can be able to move this spline that we have created. And then maybe if I remove my hand off the space bar, I can be able to adjust the size. I can be able to adjust this spline shape. Hold down the space bar again to move this into place. Okay, I think we almost have it. So I'm going to leave the space bar, and then I'm going to scale this circle a little bit again. Hold down the space bar again and move back this circle. So now we have this nice arc. Okay, it is very good. Next is we are going to duplicate this arc right here. So if we duplicate this, if you go to this layer and then click the drop down to open up this layer, you can duplicate this ellipse tool or this ellipse shape that we have created. So to duplicate a layer in Illustrator, you can still use Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V, or you can just drag this layer to the new layer icon right here. So now we have two of these, but you never know, you cannot know because one is sitting on top of the other and they are both black. So probably if you want to make this a bit different, I can just use letter I as the color picker. If you come back to a tools panel and scroll down, you notice we have the tool called eyedropper tool, and the shortcut is letter I. So if I use letter I for eyedropper, I have that small icon right there. It's like a target. I simply click on where it's pointing, and then it will choose the color for that shape. Let me use Ctrl+Z, and then I'm going to first move this layer on top. So use Ctrl+Z to go back to the black, and then move that layer to the top, and then use the eyedropper tool again. So right now I've selected this color to be applied to this shape. Okay, remember you want to create something. If I click on the eye, this eye button to toggle the visibility on or off, and then I want to zoom in. So to zoom in, you can hold down Control and the space bar. If you hold down those two, you notice we have the zoom in icon. So to zoom in, you simply click holding down Control and the space bar. And if you don't want to use those buttons, by the way, to zoom out, you can hold down Control, space bar, and Alt key to zoom out. Okay. If you don't want to use those buttons, those three buttons, you can go to this button, the zoom in tool. Okay, and click. If you want to zoom out, you simply use the Alt key. So you notice that this small icon changes from the plus to the minus. So you can zoom out like that, and then you can go back to the zoom tool and hold down the zoom tool to see the hand tool, which helps you navigate or move around Adobe Illustrator. So this is a quick crash course on Adobe Illustrator. You won't need any other tutorial to learn Adobe Illustrator. Probably not. Anyway, so let's move on. So you go to these tools and toggle the visibility back on. But since we are not seeing through, we can use Ctrl+Y. Ctrl+Y brings something called outline mode. So outline mode, you can be able to see through the objects. For example, this ellipse tool, now we can see through them. Now they are still right there, but you are not seeing them. If you, I mean, you can see them from the color of the layer. You can notice if we select it, you notice some yellow lines. If I use the selection tool to click away and select again this element, we have yellow bounding box for this layer. Okay, so what we want to do is move. Remember, we have two of these. We have two ellipses, this one and this one. So we want to move one up here. Click and move, holding down shift to keep it in the straight line. Okay, next you're going to merge these two. So the rest of this, I'm going to first turn off the visibility. I'm going to disable the outline mode by using Ctrl+Y. So we are back to our usual mode. So I'm going to zoom out a bit, holding down Ctrl, Alt, and the space bar. I want to merge this. So to merge this, we are going to use a tool called the Pathfinder. You might already know that tool. So if we go back to the window, we are looking for the Pathfinder panel. So scroll down and you'll find the Pathfinder. So the shortcut for the Pathfinder is Shift Control F9. So if you click that, we can drag the Pathfinder somewhere, and maybe under these other panels, under the layers panel. Once we have this layer selected that has both of these ellipse different shape modes here, so what we are looking for is this one right here. It's called merge. Okay, so there's tools like unite, we have one called intersect, we have one called exclude. Mostly what we are looking for here is the merge. So if I click on merge, this will merge the two, and then we have only one from two. So we have top one, which can probably delete, but we also still have the which has merged into this. So what we want is cut off these edges. It's like horns. So to cut off these horns, use what we call the direct arrow tool or direct selection tool. With the direct selection tool and also with the help of the pen tool, we can cut off these edges. Let me show you how. If we zoom in using Control and also the plus. By the way, I didn't show you this, but there are three ways to zoom in. The first way is to use the zoom tool. The other way is to use the shortcuts as I showed you, Control Alt and the space bar, zooming in or out with the Control space bar. So the other way is to use Control and minus or plus, okay, to zoom in or out. So if I use Control plus to zoom in, and then I use the space bar to move around, turn off this one right here to see where we want to cut. So I want to cut from right here. So if I select this, I use the pen tool by using letter P, or by going to the tools panel right here and look for the pen tool, and then I can click or add points. You might notice that plus icon, small icon, that small plus. It means that I'm going to add a point on the path. So I click plus and then I go up here, also add another point. Okay, so what we do is use the pen tool. Now if we bring our pen tool to a point that is already created, it brings a minus, but if you take it to a place where there's no point, it brings a plus, which means you're going to add a point. So you simply click on this to subtract that point, also click on this to remove that point, and then next we might want to create sharp edges for this. So to do that, we can use the direct selection tool, which the shortcut is letter A, and then you can hold down, probably hold down shift or not, but to make sure that these edges are sharp. Okay, and then come to this edge, select this point, and also hold down shift, and then use this handle to make sure this edge is sharp. Be careful not to distort the other side. Now if you prefer, you could even use symmetry, do it one side and mirror it the other side, but let's zoom in, do the same thing we have done the other side. I got the pen tool by using letter P, and then first add points here and right here. Okay, and then go back to the direct selection tool by using letter A, or by going back to the tools panel. Before you switch to the the direct selection tool, let's first switch back to the pen tool and subtract or delete these points, one and this one. So now let's go to the direct selection tool, hold down the shift key, make sure this is sharp edge, also the same with this. Okay, use the handle, hold down the shift key, make sure this edge is also sharp. Alright, next is the text. So the text that's supposed to be on this path. Okay, I almost forgot, we needed a path for that, but you can use one of these lines as the path. So to do that, you can simply duplicate one of these, probably put it on its own layer, drag this to a new layer. click on that arrow to close the group, and then let's create, or let's first delete these ones. So use the direct arrow. In order to select these points, always use the direct selection tool. Select this point and use backspace to delete it. Select this point, use backspace, and also select this point, use backspace. So what do we have now? If we remove this one, what we have is something like this. Now the problem might be a problem, or it might not. So what we do is we can simply go to properties and turn off this fill. Okay, turn off the fill by clicking on this none. If you want the fill, you can give it any color. We don't want the fill, so it's off. And then we can maybe add the stroke if you want. I don't need the stroke anyway. So next is go back to the layers, and then let's delete this text for now. So we have our, this one, can call it the path. Okay, and move this, the rest of this for now. We have our path under this path. So we want to create text on this path. What you do is go to text or the type tool and look for what you call type on path tool. So when you do that, you just come to the path until you see that small word path. Just click on this path. Now we have text on path. So you can change this text to whatever we want. Alright, so you might notice our text is a little bit big, and you also might notice this small plus icon. So this small plus icon tells us that there is more text that is hidden. So to solve that, you might want to reduce the size of the text first of all. Double clicking in the text, and then go to the properties panel and reduce the size of this text by scrolling down to the character. Okay, so what I did there is I mistakenly used the scroll button while my mouse was here. That changed the font. So I'll scroll again by simply putting your mouse over here. Scroll again to change the font. Next is reduce the text size, the font size, like that. So we have our full word. Now you notice that small red plus icon has disappeared. So which means we have all our text. And now that we have our text, let's bring back everything like that. And then let's make sure this text is white by using this tool right here, the eyedropper tool. Again, the shortcut is letter I, and then I simply click on this target, select that color. Now we cannot see the text right now because it's below this black finger, this black shape. So we can simply move the layer on top of the black shape to be able to see the text. And then we can also use the move tool by using letter V as the shortcut to move the text a little bit up like that. Very good. Next is let's create the shape around this logo very fast. So let's see, polygon tool might help. So select the layer on which we are going to create, and then let's probably first zoom out using Alt key, spacebar, and Control at the same time. Spacebar to move around. Create something like this. Scale this up a little bit. Actually, this shape might not work for us, and we can simply delete it by opening up the layer and dragging the layer to the delete or the trash icon. Select the layer again, and then we are going to try out what we call symmetry. So to do that, we are going to use what we call reflect. If you come to this button right here for rotate, there is scale, there is reflect. So we are going to use reflect. If I select reflect, I can start drawing. For example, with the pen tool, I can start drawing like this. Okay, click once and then hold down shift click right here, and then I'll try to make sure this point is in line with this other point. You can simply use your eye and even put a ruler there to be more specific. Okay, so to reflect this, leave it selected and come back to this to reflect. Hold down the Alt key and then click on one of these edges, the point at which you want this to reflect. So once we click that, we get a pop-up that asks us whether we want to flip or reflect this horizontally or vertically. So what you can do is tick this one, preview, so that we can see what we are doing. So this is vertical, and then this is horizontal. So what we are looking for is vertical at this same angle, 90 degrees. If you don't get what you're looking for, you can play around with this. Alright, next is you can choose whether it's a copy or it's the same one that we are rotating. So for us, we want a copy, so that we have two of them, one this side and another on the other side. So we have both of them now. Now, one mistake we might have done is we didn't fill this. We can fill this right away by going to properties, go to fill. So they already filled with white. So we can join this by going back to the Pathfinder tool, and then we can use merge. So those two are merged. So if you go back to the layer, you notice we only have one path. It's like a compound path because it's closed. So next is we can probably change the color of this path if you want. Use letter I to eyedrop for eyedropper tool, and then we have something like this. I think it needs a little bit of editing to make it look like this one on the side. So to do that, you might want to delete this point and this point by using the pen tool, by using letter P, and then delete this anchor point as well as this one. And next, we might want to make it a little bit big or something. But let's first move it in place and see what we want to do, and see what we want to edit. So select the layer and bring it to the logo, and maybe reduce the size by using those controls. Reduce the size a bit, and then scale this by using these controls as well as this, like that. So next is we are going to add stroke for this shape right here. Add the shape and maybe remove the fill. We might want to move these points. If I use the direct selection tool, I select these points, maybe this, holding down shift, select the two of them, and then moving them up like that. Okay, that's I think that's better. So putting the stroke is selecting this shape and go to properties, and then let's first move the fill. Go to the fill and go to none. Where is none? Go to fill, go back to the colors, the swatches, and go to none. So we don't have a fill now, but we want a stroke. So click on stroke and add the weight of this stroke to, what's that, 5. Yeah, I think that will do 5. Okay, that is one of them. Go back to the layers panel. What we are going to do is create or duplicate. Go back to the layers panel and duplicate this one. So once we duplicate it, we make one of these ones smaller. Now to make this small, you're going to go back to the selection tool. So it's going to select the whole path, and then you can use Alt and Shift. Alt helps us to scale from the center, while the Shift helps us to scale in proportion to the object without stretching it or anything like that. So I think we have a small size for that. So before we jump into 3D to extrude this logo, what you need to know is we need to convert these strokes into path. So to do that, you are going to select what we just created, go to object, and then look for path, and then click on outline stroke. So let me show you the difference. Let's first remove everything. Let's put back this one, which we have not yet converted. So this is the stroke, and let's also go to properties so we can see what will happen. So if we zoom in and use, by the way, you can use, if you go back to object, go to path, and go to outline stroke. Now keep a close eye on this line and see what happens. So if I click on outline stroke, you will notice that we no longer have a line in the middle. We have like a whole stroke has been outlined. So right now we can add another stroke to this, or we can simply change the color of this outline. So let's bring back everything, go back to the layers, bring back everything except these ones right here. I'm going to delete this for today, delete this, and then we have one more layer. What can we use this layer for? Let's delete this one. You can use this one for maybe creating some stars. Go to the shapes right here and create a star, one of these, and then duplicate maybe this 2 times. Move one of them right here and move the last one right here. Alright, next is reduce the size of this one, the text, a little bit by going back to properties and then scale down this text, and also make sure it's aligned the center. So to do that, look for the alignment tool. Now if you don't find the alignment tool, always go back to the window and look for alignment somewhere. Okay, in this case I think I already have it up here, align. So I'm going to make sure it's aligned to the horizontal align center, not to the left. I'm going to use the selection and make sure I move the text right in the middle, right there. So another thing we are going to do is also convert this text into outlines. So to do that, you can use Ctrl Shift O. You can go to the menu, look for type, and look for create outlines. So it's going to be, go back to the layers panel. You're going to notice that now it has created a group, which group includes individual letters, which is very nice. Also make sure to convert this text to outlines. Go back to type tool in the menu, go to create outlines. Shortcut is Ctrl Shift O. Next is let's go switch to Cinema 4D. Switch back to Cinema 4D and see what we can do. So let's try something. If we selected all these ones, remember one thing, after you have converted your strokes into outlines and also your text into outlines. So use Ctrl C to copy. Go back to Cinema 4D. So go back to Cinema 4D. If you want, you can start a new scene or delete everything here and use this same scene. You can use a tool called CV Smart. It's like a plugin you can download from the internet, and that would work. If you have installed that plugin, you can be able to copy this and go back to Cinema 4D and be able to extrude it. But since we don't have that plugin, we can do this manually. What you need to do is save this project into Adobe Illustrator 8. That's the only version that will read in Cinema 4D as the outlines. So before we go to that, we are going to first scale this logo a little bit. Okay, so select everything, hold down Shift and the Alt key, scale this. Very good. Alright, now it's time to save our 2D logo so that we can be able to extrude it in 3D. So go to File and go to Save As. Choose where to save this logo. Let's call it 3D logo. Click Save, and then once Illustrator brings up this pop-up, make sure to change the version from Illustrator CC or whatever latest version of Adobe Illustrator that you are using. Change that to Illustrator 8. Okay, make sure it's Illustrator 8 and then click OK. Next is let's switch back to Cinema 4D. So in this case, just go to File and then go to what we call Merge. Okay, you can even use Open if you want. So go to Merge and then look for the Adobe Illustrator file that you have just saved in Illustrator 8. Okay, also remember, make sure to turn or convert your text into outlines as well as your strokes before you save to Illustrator 8. Alright, so select your Illustrator 8 and you will notice this time we have a pop-up which is called Adobe Illustrator Import to Cinema 4D. So you can change the scale, or you can just leave it to 1, and also you can choose Connect Splines. Make sure you choose Connect Splines. This will help you to connect some of the splines that have been broken, or the ones that are supposed to be compound path, all that will be fixed by Cinema 4D. So simply click on OK, and then we have our logo right here. So this logo right now cannot be seen. If you try to render right here, click on the render, what you see is black. And that is because splines cannot render. So to render the splines, we need some kind of thickness to it. And to do that, we are going to use the extrude generator. So we are going to generate some skin of these splines. So to generate the skin, we are going to use extrude. So click on extrude and also make this logo the child of the extrude. Okay, so the extrude is the parent. Still nothing happens. That's because in order for this to read everything that's under here, in order for the extrude to read everything, you need to go select the extrude and go to the object and look for something called hierarchical. Once you tick that, you'll notice we have our 3D logo extruded. Now, sometimes you might want to create different extrude for double, different extrude for this other text, and different extrude for the stars. Because sometimes you want a small extrude for the stars and maybe a bigger extrude for the text. So whatever you are looking for, you can just come in and maybe duplicate this one and just leave the logo right here, delete the rest. Okay, and maybe move this one right here and delete the rest. So what we have here is, if I select this one and I use the move tool, I think we have this on its own, and we have the rest of the logo on its own. It is not so good. So let's try again to import this and untick the connected splines. So let's create a new file, and then let's go back to file, merge, bring in the Illustrator file, and this time untick connect splines. Click OK. So now we can open up this, and you notice everything has been broken down in two parts. You can zoom in using number 2 and also using the mouse. If you just right click and then zoom in like that, or you can just use the scroll to zoom out, or use this button right here to zoom out. You zoom in so much and your object gets lost, and you see this small icon right here. Now there's something, I think there is a problem with the cameras. Maybe we might have destroyed the cameras. So what you can do is use Ctrl+Shift+Z to undo all the camera moves. Okay, this will help us to go back to where we have been. So now we can zoom in slowly like this, and also use this button to move around. Zoom in again, and also place the logo into place, and maybe rotate around the logo a little bit like this using this button. Next is extruding the logo. As we have seen, this cannot render, this is black. So go to the generators, extrude, and then again just drag the 3D logo and make it the child of the extrude. Okay, so the extrude, go to the extrude and go back to object and tick on hierarchical. Next is we are going to move around some of these. For example, if I select this, you might want to move it in front or back. So this is the stars, and sometimes you might want to rename these layers so that you can be able to tell which is which. So you can call these stars. Next is try to move it around and see what this is. So this is one of the backgrounds. This one was not supposed to be a full one, but you can leave it as is for now. Maybe call it Big E. And then next is what's this? This is another Big E, probably the stroke. Let's call this one the stroke. Next is this is the text for double, so we can name this one double, and another one is the double. Actually, this is the double, and then this is the treble. All right, next is move this double a little bit in front, as well as the treble. Double and treble. Okay, can rearrange this to make sure they are in line. For example, double and treble might be at the top, and then we have the stars at the bottom, it's outside the group, bring it back into, make it the child, and then the stroke, maybe move it a little bit in front or backward, whatever you are looking for. Okay, next is we are going to reduce the depth of this extrude, make this a little bit a lot. So select on the extrude and go to the caps, sorry, and go to object. So if you go to object, look for movement, and then this is X, Y, and Z. So the movement in the Z axis, you can reduce that to whatever figure that you want. That looks nice to you. Let's go with 3 for now. Just like that, your 2D logo has been converted to a 3D logo. And if you want to go a little bit further, you can do things like lighting, set up your camera, set up your animation, all that nice stuff. That's a little bit advanced, but no problem. I'll show you some of the basics. So let's create a camera. Create a camera. Try to look into the camera by using this button. If you want, you can just set up the whole scene before the camera. If you delete the camera and then first set up the scene, zoom out, set it up like maybe this or this, whatever you want. Then create the camera, look into the camera. So right now this is our camera, and now if I click on this button, now we are not looking through the camera. We can make any changes and they won't affect our camera. So if we rotate this again, rotate this, maybe zoom out, whatever, you can just click on this camera to go back to this, which is very nice, right? Next is we can create some lighting. So click on this light icon. Now the lighting is like in a very bad position, so we cannot see what's going on here. What we can do is just click on this camera icon, get to come out of the camera so that we can be able to see or navigate around the scene and see where the light is. So select the light and you can move it away like that. And right away you can notice that now the light is making our text visible. If you go back into the camera like that. Okay, so what we can do is switch to the orthographic view. So use the middle mouse button and then zoom in into the right or the front view. You can even zoom in into the top view if you want. I'm going to zoom into the front view as well as the right view using my scroll button on the mouse. Okay, move the light away a little bit, and if you want, you can duplicate this light. You go to the top using the control key, holding down control on your keyboard. You can duplicate this light, so you have 2 lights, and then you can position this light into another place to help you make sure that all the letters are visible very well. Now, before we place lights, something that I almost forgot, you need to create materials. So to create materials, just go to this button right here, create your material, and then you can change the color by double clicking on the material, change the color, do all sorts of stuff. There's a lot that you can do from here. You can change the reflection, you can change the environment, the diffuse, the glow, even the displacement. So you can just drag this to your object and the whole logo is now blue. But you can also choose to give each of these ones their separate colors. That might require you to create various extrude knobs or extrude generators for each of these ones, for the double text, for the treble text, and for the stars, for them to be with different colors. Alright, so look out of the camera, zoom in a little bit just to see what's going on right here. Okay, now we can render like that. This is what we see right now. As I said earlier at the beginning of the video, we might want to, I might bring in my good friend Selite, Setal to do the lighting. Otherwise, this is how you create your 3D logos. This is how you convert your 2D logos into 3D using Cinema 4D. Okay, So this is like the basics of creating 3D in Cinema 4D. But this is not like the basics or the basic. This is some cool advanced stuff, including Adobe Illustrator into your workflow. This is like a professional workflow for your 3D logo creation. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to hit the like button, share the video with your friends, leave some comments, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you have any questions or you want me to bring in my friend to teach you the lighting, leave some comments in the comment section below. Alright, so thank you very much for joining me in this 3D tutorial, Cinema 4D, and I hope to see you in the next one.